Hi, this is Allison Sheridan of the No Silicast podcast, hosted at podfeet.com, a technology geek podcast with an ever so slight Apple bias. Today is Sunday, June 22nd, 2025, and this is show number 1050. Well, I have a little story to tell that's only got a little bit of a tech angle, but I think it's important to tell. On Tuesday, I was on my morning walk with our young dog Kepler, who is not very good at staying on his side. Usually trips me, 2 to 3 times on every walk. On this particular day, when he tripped me the first time, I was quite proud of myself for regaining my balance so quickly. I've been purposely taking Pilates classes on Apple Fitness Plus in order to retain my balance as I get older. After patting myself on the back for regaining my balance, we turned the corner and started walking again. And then he tripped me again. This time, I did not regain my balance. Instead, I landed flat on my face. By on my face, I mean on my nose. Now, I gotta tell you, the kindness of strangers was overwhelming. A lovely gentleman named Matt was walking his 2 dogs just up the street from me. He and I have exchanged pleasantries before, as dog people do, and he came to my rescue. He called Steve at the gym, and he walked Kepler home for me. While he was still there, a car pulled over on the side of the road, and a young middle school-age girl jumped out of the car and ran up to me and offered me a giant pile of napkins. I don't want to be too gruesome, but when you smash your nose on concrete, it bleeds quite a bit. I thanked her for the napkins and I asked her whether by any chance did she have any ice. She ran back to the car and came back with 3 tiny little ice cubes that she harvested from her water bottle. It was the sweetest thing, and I got to tell you, those ice cubes felt like heaven. Around this time, a city worker named Jose pulled over, talked to me for a quick minute, and then called emergency services. He stayed with me until the ambulance arrived. Here's something I didn't know emergency services people do. They cleaned up all of the blood on the sidewalk. I don't mean just like rinsed it down with a water bottle they happen to have with them. They use scrub brushes and everything. I suppose it's so people don't start reporting maybe a possible gunshot victim later in the day, but I was still surprised and happy no one had to see that. While these humans came to my rescue, my technology failed me. I've talked on the show about how we all need to tell ourselves, when you're not in an emergency situation, make this commitment to yourself that if your Apple Watch ever says it detects a fall and you have fallen, do not immediately press "I'm okay." I made that promise to myself. I've made a concerted thing to do that. So when I fell, my Apple Watch said, "It looks like you've taken a hard fall." I did not scroll down to tell it I was okay. I tapped immediately the emergency call SOS button. Nothing happened. I tapped it again and again and again, and it never called emergency services. Now, my understanding was that if you didn't respond, it would eventually call emergency services. But let's check the docs on exactly what it does. According to the Apple support article on this subject, it says, if your watch detects that you've been immobile for about a minute, it will make the call automatically. After the call ends, your watch sends a message to your emergency contacts with your location, letting them know that your watch detected a hard fall and dialed emergency services. Evidently, I must have moved around enough that it thought, oh, she's just fine. But I don't know why it didn't respond when I tapped the button to call emergency services. Now, a couple of people on Mastodon have responded that they thought that you had to swipe on emergency services call. Well, that's just stupid if that's what I was supposed to do, because it looks like a button to me, and I thought it would call, but it did not. Now, I want to rush to the end of this story so you don't worry too much about me. They did a CAT scan of my neck, shoulders, and head. They determined I didn't have a brain bleed, which I hadn't even thought to worry about, but they also checked that I didn't have any damage to my neck. But my nose is broken in more than one place. They can't do anything about that until the swelling goes down, but I've scheduled an appointment with an ear, nose, and throat specialist for what will be tomorrow now, on Monday, to see what is to be done. Now, if you've ever seen my profile, you'll know that I have a pronounced bump on my nose, which is from when I broke my nose running hurdles in high school. You have to picture what had to happen then. Anyway, Lindsay my daughter suggested perhaps this new break would just fix it. But I suspect it's more likely that I'm going to end up looking like Owen Wilson after this if I don't get it fixed. Now, I think the day after the accident was the worst day. My face was horribly swollen to the point that it was kind of partially shutting my eyes and everything in my face was turning purple. But by the following day, I felt 100% better, and I wasn't nearly as scary looking. The bruising was still cool, but I didn't get nearly as much sympathy. Now, I know this wasn't a tech story, but the live shows had to look at my face during the recording, so I figured the rest of you would enjoy the story as well. I don't want to force anyone to look at how bad I looked after the accident. But some people, when they know the story turned out okay, they're curious enough to want to see. So there's links in the show notes in the blog post to a couple of images for those with that morbid curiosity. I'm pretty annoyed that the Apple Watch failed me, but I'm encouraged that so many strangers came to my rescue. On one more tech angle to this story, my face was so mangled that Face ID on the iPhone did not recognize me. I had to reset it from scratch, but the next day my face looked so much worse that, again, it didn't recognize me, and I had to reset it. But then my face got better again, and I had to reset Face ID on the iPhone a third time. Now, I'm not blaming the software. I barely recognize myself, so I think this was actually good. But here's the curious thing. The iPad's Face ID never forgot who I was. Seems it's maybe a bit more forgiving, which is kind of curious. And one final thought. I am not 100% certain that it was Kepler who tripped me. Steve and I and Kepler retraced my steps from that day, and Kepler pointed out that there was a concrete meter cover embedded in the sidewalk that was about 3/4 of an inch deeper than the rest of the sidewalk. He says that's what I tripped over. But he has a conflict of interest in the outcome of the story. Anyway, I'm healing quickly, so don't worry about me. The last photo in my blog post is a picture of me at Go-Kart World on Saturday, so I'm doing just fine. I'll be okay. I'm sitting down with Celeste DaCosta of Imaginable Solutions, and she's got some crazy contraption on the table here that she's going to let me try out, but I'll let you explain what we're looking at first. This is audio only, but then there will also be a video podcast.
Hi, everyone. We are Imaginable Solutions. We make guided hands and assistive technology for people with limited hand mobility. So we help people that are amputated at the wrist, missing fingers, and anyone with limited hand mobility, including cerebral palsy, spinal cord, and brain injury, and stroke patients, be able to write, paint, draw, even access technology through our sliding system here.
So it looks pretty simple when I'm sitting at. There's maybe a 14 by 14 inch black square.
15 by 15.
15 by 15. Look at me go, girl. And there's 2 metal rods on the sides and a mechanism that slides along it. Couldn't be simpler. And then there's something I think I'm going to put my hand in that slides right to left. Is that a good description? But then it's more interesting after that. Describe what else is on the end of this.
Yep, so our sliding system here has 4 different hand pieces to help with different grips, hand sizes, and mobility. So you can use it without any hands if you wanted to. It has a strap around your wrist that you can put around your limb. And you actually are using your gross motor skills when you're using this, not the fine motor skills in your hand. So that sliding system is going to be using the strength of your shoulder instead of the fine motor skills in your hand. The hand pieces are all attached to a utensil holder, and you can change out the utensil for what we have here is a marker to be able to write and draw. You can also put a pen or even a stylus if you wanted to type on a keyboard or use any sort of tablets or touchscreen devices.
Oh, wow. So there's kind of an articulated piece that's attached to the thing you strapped your hand into. So with my hand there, not using my fingers and to do anything, I can move forward and back and right to left. I can rotate up and down. So that I would have to have a fair amount of control of my arm and shoulder with it like that, right?
Mm. Yep. So you're using those gross motor skills. They're a bit of a bigger muscle group, so it's a bit easier, but you can move near frictionless. It's very smooth, and you don't have to rely on your finger strength or those limited mobilities in your palm as well.
All right. Now at the one right next to us, they're doing the advanced class over here. Why don't you tell us what she's doing over there?
Sure. So beside you, you're seeing our adaptations kit being used. It helps with positioning, targets, and also building resistance in that sliding system. So without the resistance, it's very easy to move if you're lower tone. But if you need a little bit more resistance to build your muscle, if you're in rehabilitation and those gross motor skills, or even if you have spasticity and cerebral palsy, you can use more of a resistance model as well.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. If I do have some spasticity, did I say that right?
Yeah.
Close. Anyway, is the one I'm using is actually a little too easy to move. I can picture just kind of flailing forward, and it's so smooth and so light. I kind of feel like it would be more useful if it did have some resistance. So what I saw her do was just put some simple rubber band sort of things around it to provide that resistance.
Yep, there's a bungee cord that you can play with how strong you want the resistance by how many times you wrap it around the stands on the end of the device. But we also can add weight to the handpiece so that it adds a little bit more control. But yeah, those with low tone can use guided hands just as is. And someone who doesn't have a lot of muscle can use it as well. But we have that really awesome adaptations kit to help gear the guided hands experience to the user.
And I don't want to.
What I love about this is so simple. It's not a big complex piece of machinery. It's light. I can pick it up. I just picture this being really easy to put anywhere and help somebody be able to have a little more fine motor control that they don't have the ability to do with their fingers, but to do it with their whole arm.
Yeah, exactly. And we actually help a lot of students in school. So you can carry this device from class to class, but it really helps access that educational material, that curriculum that they haven't been able to access before.
This is really terrific. So it's called Guided Hands, and it's from Imaginable Solutions. And how much does this cost?
So the sliding system and hand pieces are $629 USD. And it comes with 4 different hand pieces and 2 different sizes, so you can use it as a small child and grow into it. We really hope this is a solution for your whole life.
Oh, that's fantastic. So if people want to learn more about guided hands, where would they go?
www.imaginablesolutions.com. We're also very active on Instagram at Imaginable Solutions as well.
Very good. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much, and thank you for spreading the awareness in your community too.
When last we left our heroes, Chris Cook and I were trying to figure out how I could record a video of her presentation to show at MacStock. She'll be talking about how she uses a tool from Pneuma Solutions called the Remote Incident Manager to connect to another person's computer to provide them technical support, all through the use of VoiceOver on the Mac. Now, our goal was to capture video of the target computer, my Mac, along with audio of her voice, my voice, and VoiceOver. The problem I described before that we ran into was that any attempt to record the audio on my Mac caused a feedback loop to Chris where she'd hear her own voice 3 to 5 seconds after she said something. It was impossible for her to perform the demo with this kind of feedback. In my previous post about our attempts to record, I explained the incredibly convoluted process we developed that required 3 Macs, 3 microphones, 3 headphones, and 1 iPhone to achieve our goal. I sent the article to Pneuma Solutions along with even more details about the problem we experienced. A gentleman named Jack from the support team wrote back with a good question. In my article, I explained that to record the audio from Remote Incident Manager, I was choosing to capture system audio. Jack asked whether I could try capturing just Remote Incident Manager instead of all of system audio. Now, I have the tools to do this, and after kicking myself for not thinking of it as a possible solution path, I set it up. My recording was being done with the screencasting software ScreenFlow from Telestream. It's designed to record the screen, and I can add as many audio input devices as I like. But applications like RIM are not audio input devices. But with the help of Loopback from Rogue Amoeba, you can create virtual audio devices out of applications. This means I can assign the audio output of Remote Incident Manager as an audio input to ScreenFlow. In Loopback, I added a new device and I named it RIM. I used the plus button to add a new source, and from the Applications dropdown, I chose Remote Incident Manager. By default, when you add a new application, Loopback mutes it when capturing. This messes me up every time I do this, so I immediately flipped open the Options chevron and unchecked Mute when capturing. Otherwise, I wasn't going to be able to hear it. Now, once you create a virtual device, it now simply exists on your Mac like you've got something physical plugged in. You can and should close Loopback and start to use the new device. In order to capture VoiceOver, it also needs to be added as a virtual audio device using Loopback. I did that so long ago that I entirely forgot that it wasn't normally exposed to applications for recording. When you create a new device and choose Applications from the source list, there's a section entitled Special Sources. From there, you can choose things like background sounds, Finder, Siri, sound effects, spoken content, System AirPlay Receiver, or VoiceOver. Now that I have my 2 virtual audio devices, I was ready to set up ScreenFlow to record. Under New Recording, I selected my built-in Retina display for the video, then the 3 audio devices, my Wave XLR mic interface, VoiceOver, and my RIM virtual device. Now all I needed was someone to test with, and it turned out Sean from Pneuma Solutions had just emailed me about the stuff we were talking about with the support staff, And I wondered if he was maybe online. I asked him for a play date, and he readily agreed. He launched Remote Incident Manager on his side, created a keyword. I entered that same keyword on my Mac in Remote Incident Manager, and instantly he was connected to my machine. He could navigate my Mac with VoiceOver, hear my voice, and I could hear his. Now, for the moment of truth, to try recording the session. I told ScreenFlow to record, and he did not get feedback on his Mac. We solved it! But are we sure that's what fixed it? If you're a good scientist, you know that a good experiment minimizes the number of things changed, hopefully one thing at a time. While we had changed just one thing on my end, we had no idea how his Mac might be configured compared to Chris's Mac, including what microphones and headphones and software she was using. But I could change this one thing back on my side, and we'd have a good experiment. I changed ScreenFlow from recording just Remote Incident Manager to recording system audio, and I asked Sean to talk. Within a couple of seconds, he said he heard his own voice reflected back to him with that terrible delay. I flipped back to recording Remote Incident Manager instead of system audio, and the echo to him disappeared. Now we have good experimental evidence of success. After we confirmed our success, I went into ScreenFlow, and I verified that I had 3 independent audio tracks and 1 video track. It's clear I'm going to need to do some work on the audio levels, but the experiment confirmed success. Now, a normal person would have just hung up on Sean at this point, but we got to be chatting about why Chris and I wanted to do this. He explained that he's tried to present Remote Incident Manager in a Zoom meeting before, and it's caused what he called a feedback tornado. I love that phrase. Now, he's been a Windows user for years, but since Numa Solutions started supporting Mac OS a couple of years ago, he's had to learn the Mac. He'd played around a little bit with demo copies of Audio Hijack and Loopback, but didn't really know how the tools worked. I couldn't pass up the opportunity to teach a 4th blind person to use Rogue Amoeba software, could I? I started with Audio Hijack, and he very quickly caught on to the concept of the little blocks you drag into a grid and why you'd want some parallel and some in series. But to fix his feedback tornado in Zoom, I suggested a possible path to success using Loopback. Let's say his coworker Jack initiates a RIM session with Sean's Mac as the target. Sean then joins the Zoom call. My suggestion was to create a virtual audio device using Loopback that combines 3 sources: his microphone, VoiceOver, and Remote Incident Manager. Using VoiceOver keystrokes while he listened to me navigate through a Remote Incident Manager, I created this virtual audio device for him using Loopback. I was kind of proud of myself for being able to do that using VoiceOver keystrokes. Once I had the new virtual audio device built, I opened Zoom, and without going into a meeting, I changed my audio input settings to this new virtual source that combined the 3 inputs. I spoke, and the little meter in Zoom moved. I had Sean speak, and again the meter moved. I had Sean move around on my Mac to trigger a voiceover to talk, and again the meter moved. Now, this isn't a thorough and complete full-circle experiment, since I didn't get on a real Zoom call, but I bet dollars to donuts this would work for him without any feedback tornadoes. I left Sean with the promise that if he ever wanted to play around with Rogue Amoeba tools again, I'd be glad to help him out. He was really quick to learn, interested in figuring things out, and he laughed at my jokes, so, it was all good. Now, a few days later, Chris and I sat down to record the demo with the new, simpler process. Now that I was recording just RIM and not the entire system audio, I was confident we could do the demo without the audio feedback to Chris. The good news is, Chris no longer experiences feedback of her own voice. The bad news is that we had a whole new problem. Instead of hearing voiceover from my machine in near real time, it was taking 5, 6, 7 seconds for voiceover to get to her. Imagine trying to do a demo where the video is 7 seconds behind. And that's what it's like for her, right? That's like she's hearing it 7 seconds after she's issued a command. Well, we disconnected and reconnected several times, but there was still this terrible lag with voiceover. My first thought was that perhaps Remote Incident Manager was somehow struggling with the amount of video being presented, as I had my external 32-inch 6K display attached, and it's pretty obvious most people using this tool would not have a big display, if any, display attached. I disconnected it, which caused a whole lot of logistical problems because everything routes through it, and finally, I just attached a second microphone to my MacBook Pro. This did not fix the problem. We disconnected the call and gave up for the evening, but continued to swap ideas over the next few days while we did more experiments. Chris ran a network speed test of her Wi-Fi. We thought maybe that was something going on, and as expected, the speed was far less than if her computer had been hardwired. I suggested using Ethernet, but she hadn't ever connected that way on her home router, so she wasn't quite sure where to plug it in. She called me on FaceTime so she could show me her T-Mobile Wi-Fi router. On the back, there were 2 open Ethernet ports. I was confused because there was no network cable going into her router. There was only a power cable. She managed to focus her phone on the model number, which I'm telling you, 98% of sighted people can never do that kind of thing over a FaceTime call, but she did it perfectly, and I looked it up. It's a 5G router using cellular, which I should have realized from the name T-Mobile. It explains why there was no network cable going in. She went out and bought a USB-C to Ethernet adapter and an Ethernet cable and hardwired her Mac. We confirmed that the interface order in System Settings Network had Ethernet at the top. That gave her much faster speeds, but it didn't fix the lag in VoiceOver coming back to her when we were trying to record. I asked her to check her activity monitor just in case there was maybe something else aggressive running on her Mac, and we found that Carbonite was chewing up 17 gigabytes of RAM, but disabling that didn't affect the lag in VoiceOver. I also read online that a VPN could affect the remote incident manager. I run Tailscale all the time, which is sort of a VPN, so I disabled it, but that did not fix the problem. I finally came up with what we think was the root cause, but I hesitate to confirm since I've been wrong so many times before. Chris usually helps her blind students with their computers who are already running VoiceOver, and that's when she connects using Remote Incident Manager. Now, Remote Incident Manager is designed such that the target machine doesn't have to be running VoiceOver to function. Since I'm sighted, I don't have it running when Chris first connects to me using Remote Incident Manager. Without VoiceOver on my Mac, the RIM connection brings up a visual VoiceOver panel in the bottom left of my screen, but I can't hear VoiceOver. Now, if I can't hear it, that means I can't record it for the demo. What we've been doing all along, as soon as Chris connects to my Mac, is I toggle off VoiceOver, which kills that little panel graphic, and then I toggle it back on to enable full VoiceOver on my Mac. After eliminating all of those other potential causes of the delay, I wondered whether my toggling VoiceOver off and back on again had anything to do with the delay that she was hearing. We disconnected yet again, and for our final test, I enabled full VoiceOver before Chris connected. She poked around on my Mac a little bit, and she said the 5 to 7 second lag was down to maybe a second, which she said she could live with. I think we found the root cause, or at least the predominant cause, of the lag with VoiceOver. We were finally ready to record. Chris's demo was to show me how to open a website in Safari, copy the URL, open notes, write a quick note, select some of the text, and then create a clickable link to the website on that text. So her steps were: first, navigate my dock to find Safari. Note that if you have VoiceOver enabled, you can type just a couple of characters to jump to an icon, which as sightlinks we cannot do. Next, she would open Safari, navigate to appleviz.com, which is a great website for learning how to do things on the Mac and iOS with low or no vision. She would bring up a panel that then shows her all of the available headings in on the web page. Now, this is why headings are so important in long-form content on the web. You don't want to just make section titles bold and big. Make them true HTML headings so that the blind can navigate between them. So now she could navigate through the headings and select an interesting section on getting started on macOS and iOS. From this section, she would find a link that looks fun and copy it. Now she'd go back to the dock, type NO to get to notes and open it. Create a new note and write some text, select the text and hit Command K to bring up the Add a Link menu, paste the link and hit OK. Finally, I made her quit Safari so she's not cheating since the web page was still up, then go back to Notes and hit the link to open it in Safari. The demo worked reasonably well for the most part, but there were some significant pauses where we had to wait for VoiceOver to tell Chris what was going on. In a few cases, she tried to go faster, and then kind of some unexpected results occurred. The full demo, as recorded, was just under 9 minutes long. Chris and I discussed editing options. On the one hand, it would be more transparent to show the demo exactly as it was recorded, but it would also be somewhat misleading since under normal circumstances, she wouldn't have this annoying VoiceOver lag of even a second. We agreed that it would be okay if I did some editing to crisp it up. As it turned out, editing out the pauses was not the hard part of editing. I can only assume that ScreenFlow caused this, but whenever VoiceOver was talking, if Chris also talked, Chris's voice level dropped by 90% in the recording. It was basically being ducked by the VoiceOver audio. This is not how it sounded on the call at all. So picture this. Chris is talking along and VoiceOver says something like, Safari, open Safari. her continuous audio track suddenly ducks way down and then way back up again. Normally, Chris either waits for VoiceOver to stop talking or she hits the control key once to make it stop. But remember, she's not hearing VoiceOver start talking until about a second or so later. Obviously, what Chris has to say is more important than what VoiceOver is yammering about in the video. So I had to select Chris's audio track, put my cursor at the point where she suddenly jumps from loud down to soft, hit the T key to split the track, then go down until VoiceOver stops talking and split it again. Then select the section where Chris is too quiet, go up to the menus in the sidebar of ScreenFlow to change the audio level from 100% to 300%. There are no keystrokes to do what I just described. Now, back to VoiceOver, I have to then decide how to bring its levels down to, say, 30 to 40% of what they were, over and over and over again. I didn't count all of the cuts on all of the audio tracks, but on Chris's track alone, I made 54 cuts. When I was done, the audio tracks from me and Chris were not as loud as I would have liked. I decided to export just our audio and run it through Auphonic to not only level it, but bring it up to the loudness standards of -16 LUFS. Figuring out how to export just the audio of Chris and me without the audio from VoiceOver was a bit tricky. Turns out you simply mute the audio track you don't want to hear, choose export, and then instead of the default of a movie file, change the type tab from automatic to manual. In manual, one of the options is lossless audio only. I then took the exported AIF audio file of me and Chris, ran it through an Auphonic production with the adaptive leveler strength set to 100%, then compressor to audio left adaptive high-pass filtering on, and the loudness normalization set to a target of -16 LUFS, max peak level of audio, and a normalization method of program loudness. I don't know if you need to hear all of that, but there's people listening who do like that stuff. So I could have spent hours and hours tweaking those settings, but it did a pretty good job of accomplishing my goal of leveling mostly Chris's audio after all my weird little chopping and bringing both of our voices up to the loudness standard. As a final step, I took the audio file created by Auphonic and I dropped it into a new track in ScreenFlow, muted our 2 original tracks, and then exported the project as an MP4 for Chris to show at the conference. The file has gone from 9 minutes down to 6 minutes long. It's also been interesting working with Numa Solutions. They've got an interesting product and some unique challenges, and they're conquering them. I've alerted them to one interesting problem that only a sighted person would notice. When I launch Remote Incident Manager, I get the weirdest thing in my menu bar. On my big display, there's what I have to call a menu bar icon, but it's 7¼ inches wide. I'm not exaggerating. I measured it with a ruler. It's a series of black, kind of blobby looking things. The first one has some curves, but the following 4 are just like squat black rectangles. It finally dawned on me what it is. It's a slice through the rim logo. So the blobs are the part where the R, or the blobs that are curvy are the part of the R, a slice through the I, and then slices through the 3 humps of the M that gives you your 4 rectangles. Anyway, when I was chatting with Sean, I brought this up, and we noodled on it, and he's pretty sure they just need to replace the asset for the icon. I suggested taking a peek at the API from Apple, which I can only assume exists somewhere. It's the kind of thing, though, that only a sighted person would notice. I needed it because it's the only way you can quit the app after a session, but Chris uses all keystrokes to access the menu bar options. It's not a smooth process yet to provide support to a sighted person, but my interactions with Sean Beaver in tech support, Matt Campbell, the CTO, and Mike Calvo, CEO, have all been positive. I believe they'll keep improving Remote Incident Manager so blind people can help provide tech support to us all. Now, here's a funny thing. I was searching podfeed.com for Numa Solutions to check something from my original post about Remote Incident Manager a couple of weeks ago, and I found a second article on podfeed.com. Guess what? Matt Campbell, the CTO I just mentioned, he was on Chit Chat Across the Pond back in 2021. He came on and talked about accessible overlays that were becoming all the rage and how they were actually a terrible thing for accessibility. I remember when Leo Laporte was advertising for one of these companies that makes an accessible overlay, which promises to fix all of your accessibility problems with a push of a button. I wrote to Leo to let him know that they're actually terrible and they make things worse, quoting Matt and pointing him to the interview. I don't know if he listened to me, but he did stop advertising for them fairly soon after that, so I'm giving me and Matt credit for it. The bottom line is, I think that Chris and I achieved our goal in the end. I learned a lot, which is always a good thing, and I enjoyed using my skills to help Chris produce a product that will demonstrate to the audience what she does every day to help other people. Getting to know Chris even better through this experience was great. She was willing to try anything, do endless experiments, buy an Ethernet cable, and she also laughed at my jokes along the way. If you'd like to see our masterpiece video, it's embedded in the show notes for your enjoyment. Well, it's that time of the show when I normally panhandle for money to support the show. I'm not going to steer you away from such a noble gesture, but I'm going to ask you for something different. If you ever see someone fall down, stop and make sure they're okay. And don't take their initial word for it. Wait with them for a bit and see if there's maybe someone they'd like you to call. Maybe offer them some napkins and a few ice cubes from your water bottle. I'm sure you would anyway because you're a NosillaCastaway and you're all wonderful people, but that's really all I want this week. Well, it's that time of the week again. It's time for Security Bits with Bart Bouchatz. What do we got on deck today, Bart?
We have a smorgasbord of a few things, and that's kind of it, really. And no deep dives. Well, neither of us had a great week, so I think we're a little bit minimalist today. But, there's some stuff here.
That means nothing horrible happened that you have to tell us about.
Depending on where you rate things, I suppose. It's a mix. Well, let us start with some follow-ups of things we've talked about before. So the problem we have with these sort of greyware companies, that they're legitimate businesses. They're not criminals. Like they have a business, they're all established, and they sort of say they only sell their spyware to law enforcement and that no one would ever abuse it. And it keeps showing up being abused when Citizens Lab look at journalist phones and stuff. And so, yeah, it's still happening. Pegatron, rather than the NSO group this time. We now know that there was an attack a few months ago using an iOS 0-day that Apple patched a few months ago. So if you are patched, you're fine. And you were probably not a target. Let's face it. That's how these 0 days go.
It's getting harder and harder to call that stuff grayware.
I agree, but they're not criminals, right? They have an office, an address, you can go visit.
Okay.
Yes. The bad news for poor 23andMe continues. The UK government have fined them for a, quote, profoundly damaging breach when they leaked everyone's genetic data. Well, not everyone. They leaked lots of people's genetic data.
So
seems accurate.
They're fully bankrupt already, though, and being sold, and actually being sold back to the woman who started the company.
That is the latest twist. Yeah.
Yeah. So how do you?
Presumably it comes out of the estate. In bankruptcy, you're under bankruptcy protection, so the court might give a discount, but it's still a debt to be somewhere on the list of debts.
I don't know if you can debt after the bankruptcy's already started. You're already paying off the debtors, and somebody goes, "I want a piece of that." I don't know if I know nothing about bankruptcy law.
Yeah, it's a liability rather than a debt, right? They didn't get out a loan. It's an existing liability.
But it's not an existing liability. It's a new liability coming up after they declared bankruptcy.
Well, no, because the action was before. They breached the data before they went bankrupt. So if you're doing due diligence, then if you were to buy a company, it'd be your problem because you bought them and therefore you bought all of their past stuff too. So the bankruptcy, well, I don't know. We are kind of the blind leading the blind, aren't we?
Steve and I call this arguing in a vacuum, where you know almost enough to have the conversation, but you're actually completely unqualified by the time you get 3 sentences in. The way we play the game is you try to see how long you can keep going before the other person calls BS.
What was that argument from, was it one of the Mac Geek guys? I've already told you more than I know.
Yeah. That's one of Dave's favorite phrases. All right.
Okay.
Oh, great.
Back to things I do know about. Apple have a new ally in their fight with the UK government over iCloud Advanced Encryption. WhatsApp. They have filed the paperwork with the court to give evidence in the case on Apple's side.
Well, that makes sense since they're all about having encryption, right? That it's going to affect them if they don't. But strange bedfellows.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? And then just a footnote here, the TikTok ban has been extended by another 90 days. Still no basis in law for that, but hey.
No, because it's a law.
Yeah. So anyway, we shall see.
Okay.
Right. Action alerts. It has been Patch Tuesday. Patchy, patchy, patch, patch. If you're feeling a bit sluggish, one of the 0 days was already attacked. So patchy, patchy, patch, patch.
So isn't that what a 0 day means?
No,
It's already been patched? Or, already been hacked?
Microsoft have a looser definition if it's known even by security researchers. Basically, if someone knows it before Microsoft, they call it a 0 day, even if they're not baddies.
Oh.
It's unusual for Microsoft to make themselves look worse than they are, but their definition is broader than the average, which is odd.
Okay.
Yeah. And then we have learned about a bug in Secure Boot. The good news is if you applied your Windows updates over the last couple of months, you've been fine for a while, because this was actually patched a while ago, but because it was so dangerous, they haven't told us until quite a bit of time had passed.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because Secure Boot is a vital protection for people who are important. So if you were to be traveling to a dodgy country and lose sight of your phone or something for a second, Secure Boot is what would stop something being installed to spy on you behind your back, because it shouldn't be
Right.
bootable without your credentials. But if there's a Secure Boot problem, then that could be used as a 0 day by a state actor to stick spyware deep in your firmware or something.
Huh. Okay, but if you've been patching, you should already be okay.
Correct. So
Okay.
if and even now, if you apply the latest Windows patches, your firmware will get fixed. Basically, they're revoking a leaked private key.
I see. Okay. Well, that's good.
Yes. Some worthy warnings then. You need to be careful of people sending you invites to Discord. And the actual problem isn't with using Discord. So this is a headline that took me a couple of minutes to get my head around, because I was like, oh my God, I'm a Discord user. Oh my God, Alison runs a Discord server. Oh no, is this terrible? So you're fine. It
Okay,
doesn't
good.
affect owners of a Discord server at all. Our Nosilla castaways are fine, because it doesn't affect people who are already members of a Discord community at all. What it is people can abuse old, expired, custom invite links. So if you pay Discord, your invite link doesn't have to be random gibberish. You can make a pretty one.
Okay.
And if you then stop being a customer, and then someone else becomes a customer, they can take your pretty invite link, and they found a way to make the invite link send people malware instead of inviting them to Discord.
Okay. So what if you have an ugly link and then you stop using it? Can't they end up with the ugly link?
The ugly links are random. So if you did that 1,000,000 times a day for 1,000,000 days, by the age of the universe, you would succeed.
You mean at getting one of the ones that
Getting
was dead
one.
and you should...
Yeah.
Okay. I see. But it's easier because you can buy the pretty one?
Yeah.
Huh. So you got to figure out what existing one is out there that you could then abuse.
Yeah, so if you were a baddie, you might just look at some email that's leaked in all the 20 kabillion leaks.
Oh, you're not going to Discord and getting this link.
No, you're looking for links in all of the leaked data. Then you try them, and anyone that doesn't work anymore, haha.
That's what you attach to. I see. Okay. So podfeed.com/chat takes you to an ugly Discord link, and that means it's safe.
Yes.
Actually, when you click it, you ought to see Discord in your web browser trying to log you into the Discord chat for Podfeed.
Yes. Whereas if you fell victim to one of these links, a download would happen. It would be a drive-by download.
Oh, it actually okay.
But I don't think it's the Mac. I think it's only Windowsy people. But don't assume they wouldn't change their attack vector. Yeah, that's the symptom.
Okay, so Don't click on Discord invite links from where you were not expecting them.
Bing, bing, bing. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the perfect advice. Now, if you are one of the many, many, many people who use ASUS products, and you're one of the many, many, many people who use their cooler features, like they come with like LEDs on the motherboard and you can change the colors so that your gaming PC glows in purple instead of in pink. The app you use to do all of the non-standard stuff is called Armory Crate, for some reason.
Okay.
The thing has a really nasty bug. It's also the app you use to get your drivers from ASUS. So if you're a Windows user and you're using Armory Crate, which is the default, patch, ASAP.
And what does the bug do?
It gives the attacker admin privileges. So
the icky kind.
yeah, the icky kind. Not the most icky kind, the second most icky kind.
And the level of ick to really ick.
Yeah. Now, there is a free webmail service that is designed to be privacy respecting with a terrible name, which apparently the creator did as a joke. I'm going to spell
Maybe you
it
should
out.
spell it. I'm reading it. I think you should spell it.
Yeah. It's cock.ly. They've had a massive... Li. Oops, sorry. Yes, Li. They've had a massive data breach because they accidentally left an old Roundcube mail server lying around. So all of that privacy protecting email is kind of leaked. So if you're one of those users, you need to go read the story on Bleeping Computer.
Is it like you lost your credentials?
Yeah, it's like you lost all your email, I think.
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, privacy
and it's a
respecting.
privacy-focused free email provider. Oops.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Great.
And finally, so this story is specific. This specific story is specific to AT&T customers in the United States, but it's actually an example of something bigger, right? So we now live in a world where data breaches happen so often, I don't even bother talking about 99.9% of them, but they can add up. So if one site loses your social security number and your email address, and another site loses your email address and your phone number, the attackers can now get your social security address, your email, and your phone number because they start to connect the different breaches together.
Right.
And so someone blew the dust off the massive AT&T leak from a few years ago, had a look at all the other data breaches there have been since, and reconstituted the AT&T one to enrich it with all the other information they could find. So now it's become an
So
Uber
they triangulated.
breach. Yeah.
Oh, geez.
So yeah, if you're an AT&T customer, the details are in the bleeping story link in the show notes. And I think just in general, it's just it's almost a fascinating illustration of what is going on in cybercrime at the moment. Yeah. Right, moving on to notable news, and don't worry, the good news stories are end-weighted as normal. So, do you know the way I say this quite often, that baddies, they're very fashion conscious. They all discover some easy pickings and they all go after it, and then once they've picked all the easy stuff, they go after something else. And for the last 2 years, US healthcare has been where the ransomware gangs have made a killing, because there's a lot of private healthcare that's under a lot of strain. They don't tend to have the resources to protect themselves very well, and the data's valuable. That's a dangerous mix, and we've talked about these breaches quite a bit. That well is running dry. They found a new well. Insurance companies. Now, this well is interesting because they're finding that it's way better defended, and so they are breaking in and they are causing disruption, but they're not stealing as much data. So, yes, there was a breach in Aflac, which are a pretty darn major insurance company, but they didn't get very much because, unlike the very stressed public healthcare system, the insurance companies appear to have better IT. So they nipped it in the bud, and they actually have a really good release telling people, hey, we spotted this early, we did this to lock this down, we did this, we did this, we did this. And I was like, oh, okay. That's quite good, actually.
So they probably won't squat on this particular idea very long if they keep running into brick walls on it.
I imagine it won't be years and a couple more weeks and they'll probably move on. I mean, they're going to find some weaker insurance companies, maybe the smaller ones.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, none of us have any love lost for our insurance companies here in the United States, but every penny they have to pay is just a penny we have to pay. So
Right.
you can't quite be joyful. You can snicker a little bit.
Right. But as long as you're not a customer, because then they have your data and then you can't snicker at all.
Yeah, that sucks the fun out of it, doesn't
It
it?
does, rather. Now, there has been a thing reported as a massive data breach, but it sort of isn't. So 16 billion with a B logins, which is a lot. But this isn't a new breach. This is a collection of stuff stolen by keyboard loggers and stuff like that has accidentally leaked. So the cyber criminals have lost their collection of stuff they've harvested over the last couple of years. So yes, it's a lot, but it's probably no more than we expected. And yes, it involves Apple passwords and Google passwords, but none of these sites have been breached. This is humans who have been breached and the data has been collated together. So I linked to the bleeping security article and the Apple Inside article because they give it good coverage. They explain why it's not the catastrophe it sounds like. And the conclusion to the Apple Insider article, I think, hits the nail on the head perfectly. Because the thing to take away from this story is basic internet and password hygiene can go a long way towards thwarting criminals. And while some of this can take time to set up, once it's all up and running, you should never have to think about your username and password ever again, even when there is a breach. So when you set up your multi-factor and you do all that, then if they steal your password, they still haven't gotten in. If you don't reuse your passwords, you know?
And back to 2FA wherever you can, right?
Right. And passkeys wherever you can. It's even better. Speaking of which, Meta are expanding their support for passkeys. So they've had it on their website. Now you're getting it on iOS and Android, which means they're getting quite close to universal passkeys, which means they should soon be able to follow Microsoft and give the option of making you not have a password at all. So that is the future.
Good.
Yeah.
I got to say, I have several times in the last few weeks successfully used a passkey.
Yay!
It's by no means universal where I've been able to use it before and it's still working, but I have had that happen. So,
well, good. Also, another little bit of good news. There were a lot of people ended up in a bit of a mess when the WordPress founder had a moment and went nuts.
oh, right.
And they're still having a giant big legal fight with WP Engine. But that highlighted the fact that Matt Mullenweg had a lot of control over updates for plugins for every WordPress user. And in theory, this is an open ecosystem. So this one person having control is a bad smell. Well, we have a good solution. The Linux Foundation have stepped in and went, here is an alternative repository of plugin updates. If you manually install this one plugin, your WordPress will now talk to our servers instead of Matt Mullenweg servers, and then you'll have plugin updates forever.
So, how do the plugin operators or all the people who write plugins know to now start putting them over there instead of in Automatic's?
I imagine
server?
two mechanisms. So a bit like every podcast catalog reads Apple's catalog and adds their own, and it's the Linux Foundation. So they are big enough that people do know to submit their stuff there.
So they have to submit them in two places.
I don't think they have to because the WordPress one is not fully closed. So I think you can read its RSS feed or whatever. So I imagine it's a mirror and an alternative on standby should things go even further off the rails.
Okay. So would you suggest somebody like me who runs a WordPress server do anything to start getting my plugins from there?
Personally, I'm going to do it I'm trying to get rid of my WordPresses, but I still have them. And I don't
Mhm.
like the dependency on automatic. So that's the company Matt Mullenweg runs. They've lost my trust and confidence. So I will be manually installing this one plugin, which will flip my WordPress installs over to pointing at the Linux Foundation. Tell you what, Alison, I'll go first. And
You
if
go
I don't,
first.
if I don't hate it, then I'll let you know.
Okay, that sounds good. So you only have to do this one plugin that says now start getting from over there, and you don't have to reinstall all your plugins?
No, it just means that in future, you know the way WordPress uses a URL to detect if your plugins need to be updated? Well, instead of asking automatic servers what updates do I need, it'll ask the Linux Foundation servers what updates do I need.
I did not know that's how it did it. Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Right. And then second from finally, DuckDuckGo have added they've added some extra little bits of AI to make their browser better at detecting fake sites and crypto messiness and stuff. So, if you're sort of going, I wonder, do I want that privacy protecting browser and that privacy protecting search engine? Well, maybe this is like one extra little nudge to head that way over whatever you're doing now. I prefer to stick with Safari and use Kagi as my search engine, but whatever floats your boat. It's no harm to have a little bit more protection in DuckDuckGo.
Okay. Cool.
And then finally, 2 pieces of technical debt being paid down by Microsoft to make everyone more secure. And given how many kabillion users there are, this is always a good thing. So Microsoft are going to stop supporting so-called legacy authentication on OneDrive. So that means that if you have to use the modern OAuth 2 style plugins, which means that, so imagine you have some sort of a third-party app for OneDrive. Or actually, no, let's step back. When you install a third-party client for, say, Mastodon, you don't give it your password. It takes you to the Mastodon login page, you log in, and then you grant the app permissions.
Okay.
That's modern auth. The old mechanism was that you trusted the third-party client with your username and password. And so now you are giving your username and password to strangers. So that's legacy auth.
Right.
And right now, today, by default, new customers can't do that on OneDrive, but old customers still can. And Microsoft basically went, we are just drawing a line under legacy auth. It is just going away for OneDrive. So everyone is going to be using the proper modern authentication, which supports multi-factor and everything, because you have this web loop in the mix, which means you can do multi-factor and passkeys and all that great stuff. It's just a nice hardening of OneDrive, which has so many people's data on it.
I didn't realize that there were third-party apps and integrations with OneDrive.
Oh, it's very popular. A lot of cloud services love integrating with it because it saves people downloading and updating
Gotcha.
files.
Yeah. 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 I'm not a big OneDrive user because the Mac client has traditionally been terrible. I don't know if it's still terrible, but it was
Thankfully
terrible for a long
not.
time.
Oh my God, was
Okay.
it awful. Oh, it was so bad.
Well, I used to try to do it when I did a lot of work with the SMAR podcast guys, but I'm just going to tell a story because we have time. My favorite story about OneDrive was Chris Ashley figured out a way to completely destroy everything in his OneDrive because what was it he did? He created a backup that included his OneDrive file, and it turns out the OneDrive file gets updated every time. It's like a bundled file. So if you change one text character in one file or you send one email or whatever, it bundles it all up again. And so he was getting it was getting updated and updated. This backup just kept running over and over and over again. And the way he noticed it was he was using like 16 terabytes a day on his internet service.
Poor
Just
thing could
basically
never
created
catch
this
up with
horrible
itself.
loop. Yeah. It was not good. It was a pretty funny story. So anyway, that's what I think of when I think of OneDrive. But maybe I should give it another try one day. But I know that you couldn't do the one thing I want to do, which is I want to right click on a file and say share this link, like
Yes,
the
you can.
Dropbox link. Oh,
And you
wow.
can choose read only or not read only right there from the right click menu. Yeah,
Oh, that's
it needed so much TLC. Well, I'm happy to say it's gotten it, because otherwise I think I'd go mad, because I have to use it for work. So I'm stuck with it.
Yeah.
It's, oh my God, is it better? Thank
It's good
goodness.
good to know. It's been at least 5 years since I've ever even touched it. It's just like, no, get away from me.
Yeah.
Well, and
The pandemic
also-
fixed it, to be honest.
Well, I
That working
also
from home thing just lit a fire under them.
people had to. I also dislike that by default, when you first install Office 365, it defaults to storing all of your data in their cloud service in OneDrive. And we put it on Steve's dad's computer, and the last thing on earth Steve's dad would want would be his financial documents on a cloud service. Not going to do it ever, ever, ever. We installed it and went, oh no. I mean, it just started putting them there. We had to go get them and erase them and cross our fingers that he never found out.
Yeah, once
think
you
it ought to
toggle the
ask
save
you.
as, once you toggle it to use local once, it always remembers what you did last.
Right, but it was there. It's in a backup somewhere, right?
They must have been Office 365 members rather than people who'd bought the standalone app, because otherwise it couldn't have done that.
Yeah, I said Office 365.
Okay, yeah.
That's why I said it.
So they had
Yeah.
bought OneDrive.
No, they bought Office 3. They bought Microsoft Office.
Yeah, but
In
they
fact,
bought a
all he wants
suite,
is Excel.
right? It's like by
They
default.
didn't have a choice, Bart. It should have asked him. Should have said, where do you want to keep your files? In the cloud or on your machine?
Yeah, iCloud does the same. iCloud
No, it does
defaults
not.
you. Unless you
No, it does not.
Unless you
have to turn
proactively
off-
tell a Mac installer, I have to tell it not to save my desktop in the cloud every single new Mac, and I always forget. And so by
It is
default,
not by default. No,
is now.
No, it's not.
it was last time I installed the Mac, I promise you, because I got it wrong. I just clicked next, and it's like, oh, sugar, everything's in the cloud.
So you're saying it asked you, and you didn't uncheck it. This never asked. This
But the save
just did
as
by
shows
default.
you you're saving to the cloud, not your Mac.
To someone who's never seen an interface that is, I find it very unobvious that it's storing it in the cloud. I was confused by it. I didn't find it easy to follow. It did not appear to me that I had done it. And I'm fairly tech savvy.
I would
So,
sort
I
of
don't-
say the same about the OneDrive. It says something like, keep your
That's what I'm talking about,
desktop in
OneDrive.
sync. Sorry, iCloud
ask.
Drive. Yeah, but
Yeah.
it was the same thing. It just defaulted it. Yeah, anyway, it doesn't matter. I don't care. They're not paying me. I wish they
Yeah,
would.
there you go.
They should. Anyway,
All
where were
right.
we? Yes, good. Technical debt. Another piece of technical debt. So it started off as a security feature that Windows Update would offer you driver updates. Because in the really bad old days, the only way you ever got a driver update on Windows was to go to the vendor. And about a decade and a half ago, Microsoft started to let the vendors give Microsoft the drivers so that they could give them to you in Windows Update. So when you did your monthly patch, you would get new drivers, which is a security bonus. But when a vendor discontinues a product, most of them don't ever think to tell Microsoft to stop giving out that old driver. So if people are still using the unsupported piece of hardware, the unsupported driver is still sitting in Windows Update. And so they install a brand new version of Windows, and Windows Update goes, what do I know about this hardware? Oh, here's a driver. And they give out the old driver for the old stuff. So it keeps working. So what they're going to do is they're going to clean up their catalog. And they're going to do it in phases so as to cause the least amount of trouble. And the first thing they're going to do is delete every driver that has a newer version of that driver.
That might make things not work.
Which shouldn't. The second thing they're going to do is delete all the drivers that are out of support. And that might, but that phase isn't happening for another 18 months or 2 years.
Meaning you could go back and get the one that's still being supported?
Yeah, but they're going to basically... Yeah, so the first thing they clean up the stuff that should break nothing, and then they're going to clean up the stuff that will break people because they should be broken because they're actually massively insecure. But that'll be the more stressful phase. That phase 2 will cause a little more crankiness.
Yeah, I'm thinking about when, I think it was in Sonoma that our printer stopped working on our Macs. And the best part is we just noticed for like 9 months. where like one day I had tried to print, I was just like, printers mean stupid, whatever. I just ignored it. And I don't know, sent a print job I think it was actually to print a photo. And I just said, okay, I'll just send it over to CVS. I don't care. I'll go drive over and pick up a picture. And then it was like 6 months later, Steve tried to print something going, I can't print. I don't understand what's going wrong with it. And I look it up and they had, the new driver was in place and it was
Work.
gone. You could no longer print to that printer. But then I got a color laser printer and everything's wonderful now.
I do like color laser printers. No, it's funny you mentioned printers because I got the fright of my life a week ago when I was working from home and all of a sudden this thing made a noise I couldn't remember ever hearing before. It was the printer.
Oh, that's so funny. Lindsay pays a subscription fee to HP for her printer, and it sounds really stupid, but it's not. It's like $1 a month.
Oh,
And as long as she doesn't print more than something like 9 pages, she's fine. And if she wants to print more, she can pay a little bit, but she never has to buy ink cartridges.
yes. And the printer is basically saying it's telling HP when your cartridge is empty and a new one
Yep,
just
let me send
appears
you
because
another
you're
one.
subscribed.
Right. But I mean, it's literally going to cost her like $12 a year. And she's been doing it for years now. And every once in a while, kids got a school project or something, might do a couple extra. It's like, it's fine.
Right. Actually, yeah, because the downside of color laser printers is the ink lasts for ages or the toner. But when it goes, it's quite expensive. And there's 4 of
It's
them.
not that bad. It's not that bad. I mean, I was paying well over $100 for a color cartridge and a black cartridge for my my cheesy, terrible, I wanted to shoot it every day of the week printer from HP.
Oh, that is fair. You're paying good money for good prints. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. I mean, I've been buying the third-party ones they tell you not to buy, but they've been fine.
Me too. Okay,
All right.
that was it in terms of news. I have one excellent explainer. The guys over at Intego. So this is technically speaking an advertisement in the sense that at the very, 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 very end in the last paragraph, they say you might want to install an AV. Oh, look, we sell one. But it's actually a really good article. It's one of I've added it to my bookmark manager under my for reference folder.
Raindrop.io.
Yeah, you see. Basically, what to do if your Mac was hacked, and actually start by describing how things can go wrong, what symptoms to look for, like what different weird things, like hey, my CPU's always running, or these kind of things, or there's always network traffic even when I'm doing nothing. They walk you through the symptoms a normal person might notice, and then they walk you through things to check and things to fix. And only at the very, very, very end did they say, and maybe if you ran AV, that wouldn't happen in the first place. Oh, look, we saw one. So that was a really good article.
Oh, interesting. I'll take a look at that. That does sound good. Definitely sounds like one to keep in the back pocket.
Right. And I hope I never need it. But yeah, I have it in case. And, well, given the week you've had, no palate cleanser from you, I'm not surprised.
Actually,
oh, good.
I've decided to put one in here.
Yay.
The palate cleanser I'd like to give is Bart's Let's Talk Photography episode 141. It's his photography podcast. If you haven't listened to it, it's fantastic. It's about the art and craft of photography. It's not about gear. It's not about you should buy Nikon or Canon or whatever. In fact, he's now a phone photographer, and he doesn't preach for any software or anything like that. But this one is entitled Alt Text, Do It For You. And I found this such a fascinating story where Bart kind of walks you through his journey from knowing about what alt text was and, maybe feeling guilty about not putting alternative text on photos for screen readers, to kind of dipping his toes in, to maybe doing it poorly, to fully embracing the writing of them. And his lecture is on how it will help you improve your own photography. And I got stuck on the spot where he said, don't let AI help you. I'm like, what? That's the way I do it. But then you got to stick with the end of the story. I didn't get the premise going in, but it made perfect sense. It was a fantastic episode. These are not long episodes. It was probably 20, 30 minutes, something like that. And it was fantastic. I loved every minute of it.
Oh, thank you. And yourself and the Nosilla Castaways get credit because my awareness of the real world impact of accommodating people with accessibility issues is from this community. And it's members of this community who would give me a little pat on my head going, hey, thanks,
Oh, I'm not going to spoil the story. Your story of when you got thanked for your alt text once was just chef's kiss to the missing the point. That was
Right.
fantastic.
And that was
Yeah,
a member
definitely.
of the
So it's a
Nocilla Castaways who sent me that comment that was so positively spun, it just landed perfectly. Because it was technically an insult, but it was said in such a nice way.
as my daddy always said, you catch more flies with honey.
Right.
So anyway, it is episode number 141, and those are at lets-talk.ie. You can find Let's Talk Photography and Let's Talk Apple, which is also fantastic there.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I've
You're
already
welcome.
started writing my notes for the June show because it's WWDC. Oh my God, is that going to be a
jeez.
difficult show?
You're going to need a bigger boat.
Yeah. God, everything is that 50-year anniversary of Jaws. It's fascinating, though. I can hear lots of cool stories.
Yeah.
You
All
won't
right,
care
what's your
about
palate
this,
cleanser?
right? But they re-released the soundtrack, remastered, Jaws 50.
Oh, really?
If you like music, it's amazing.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Okay, I have 3 palette cleansers for 3 different media. So a photograph, a podcast, and a video. So whatever media you like, I have something for you.
Okay.
So look, I don't want to overdo XKCDs, but this one tells the story of why science is so important perfectly. It's a chef's kiss.
And what
So,
good science is.
yeah, it's basically a teacher showing, not telling, and I'm not going to spoil it. I'm going to say, have a read. It's called Good Science. And the last slide, I don't know, the last frame, what do you call the things in a cartoon?
Yeah, frame, I guess.
Frame.
In a cartoon, in a comic.
Panel. That's the word.
Panel.
It's a
There you
panel.
go.
Someone was shouting at their iPads or their iPhone, so there we are.
And
So-
it's XKCD 3101 if you're looking it up. So all XKC cartoons are xkcd.com/ and then the number, so 3101.
Bing, bing, bing.
I've sent this everywhere. That is such a great one.
It's one to print out and hang on the wall, actually. I have 2 or 3 on my office cubicle, and I think this one joins the club. So the next one really made me think of you because I'm beginning to get caught up on actually using AI. I held off for a while because I was a little bit icky about the privacy and the environmental stuff, but I'm getting into it now, and not all AI is the same. Anyway, you sort of encouraged me to get stuck in, and so when this episode came up on the Revisionist History podcast, which I trust to give good content, I gave it a listen. The title is How AI Assistants Can Transform Education. And as is always the way with revisionist history, you might assume this is about replacing teachers with AI. It's not. It's about as opposite of that as you can get, and I won't spoil it.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
I'll take a look.
Yeah, and you will love it, I promise.
You've been nailing the recommendations. Everything you've done lately has just been spot on. I've loved them. Completely different from what I would sign up for normally.
That is one of my criteria. It's something I think you love that you probably didn't find on your own. So last one then is just perfect timing again. It's another anniversary. So Steve Jobs gave an absolutely famous commencement address to Stanford. It's titled Stay Hungry, Stay Foolish. And the Steve Jobs Archive, which is run by his widow, have remastered the rather shaky video with, again, the joys of modern AI. And so now it is a masterful quality copy of the speech. I rewatched it and it still gives me goosebumps.
Really? Really?
Yeah. I've heard it before. And it still did it. It still had the hair in the back of my neck stand up. It's fantastic.
He was certainly was a visionary, right?
Right. Yeah, he made a dent on the universe. Quite the dent.
Well, very good. I'll check that one out too. I do remember watching it. It'd be interesting to see if it has the impact it did back when I first saw it. I've probably seen it a couple of times, but yeah, I definitely remember it being a good one.
Yeah, I think it's only 9 minutes, so it's not a huge commitment.
I could spare that much time.
There you go. Well, that's all I got.
All right, that's all I've got.
Okay, well then, in that case, folks, you know what to do. Until next time, stay patched so you stay secure.
Well, that's going to wind us up for this week. Did you know you can email me at allison@podfeet.com anytime you like? Tell you what, remember I mentioned last time I need some recordings because I've got a bunch of stuff coming up and I've got a vacation and I don't want to make anybody do the show for me. So anything you got that you might want to review, you can send it to allison@podfeet.com. The review, not the thing. Anyway, if you have any questions about how to do it, just go ahead and shoot me an email and we'll talk about it. It'll be awesome. If you have a question or suggestion, you can also send that on over. Remember, everything good starts with podfeet.com. You can follow me on Mastodon at podfeet.com/Mastodon. If you want to join and listen to the podcast on YouTube, go to podfeet.com/YouTube. If you want to join in the conversation, you can join our terrific Slack community at podfeet.com/Slack, where you can talk to me and Joe from the North Woods and Alistair Jenks and Barb Bouchatz and everybody over there. They're all awesome. It's super fun. You can also support the show by going to podfeet.com/Patreon or with a one-time donation at podfeet.com/donate. There you can use Apple Pay or any credit card, or you can use PayPal by going to podfeet.com/PayPal. And if you want to join in the fun of the live show, head on over to podfeet.com/live on Sunday nights at 5 p.m. Pacific time and join the friendly and enthusiastic Nosilla castaways. If you'd been here this week, you could have gotten to see my mangled nose. Anyway, thanks for listening and stay subscribed.